Hello and welcome to Slightly Nostalgic. My name is Griff, and we have watched Avatar: The Last Airbender Season 1, Episode 12, The Storm. This is an interesting one because it's mostly just like a breather, like we just pause and we get a lot of backstory information with Aang and Zuko. It's a really interesting episode. I like it a lot. It starts out a little bit silly because there's all these arguments between people about whether or not there's going to be a storm, and as the viewer, you know there's going to be a storm. You're not going to have a character going, "A storm's coming, I think," and then another character going, "Nah, the skies are clear, we're going to be fine," and then there's no storm. Like, no, of course not. And since I guess I have to mention this every episode now, they really should be disguising Aang and being more careful about people finding out that the Avatar is around and where he is, because somebody recognizes tattoos as Airbender tattoos. I mean, it's only been 100 years, and everybody knows the Airbenders are all gone, so maybe stop walking around openly looking like an Airbender. One thing that's kind of weird, though, is when the old man recognizes his tattoos, he doesn't really make a big deal out of it, like, "Oh, it's the Avatar." Like, I mean, you kind of get the sense that the Avatar has been a big deal in this society for a long time, and then he disappears for 100 years, and suddenly somebody notices that he's there, and his first thought is just like, how could you just abandon us like this? Yeah, get out of here, kid. Like, you know, it was a weird reaction. Every time somebody finds out he's the Avatar, they don't like freak out and go like, "Oh, the Avatar," like you would expect them to. It's kind of strange. But that's enough complaining. What I really like about this episode especially is Zuko's backstory here. We get finally a detailed explanation for how he got his scar and why he's banished and all of that. It turns out he's banished because he refused to fight his father. I think that's the most interesting part of it. It's not just that he spoke out of turn or whatever, embarrassed his father in the war meeting, but although that is interesting because we see that Zuko, like, he always has had a good heart, right? He was speaking out to in defense of the innocent soldiers that the Fire Lord commander, not the Fire Lord, the Fire Nation commander was planning to just sacrifice as part of a strategy, right? Like, he didn't feel like that was right, and so he was speaking out. And the whole reason he got his scar is because he refused to fight his dad in a duel, and his dad punished him with the scar and banishing and all of that. It's like, oh man, that's some heavy stuff. Oh, and something I noticed during that scene of the Agni Kai is Azula is actually there in the audience next to Iroh. And at this point, we have no idea who she is. We don't know that that's Azula. It's just some girl there. But it's interesting, like, after having watched the whole series, going back and seeing that, it's like, oh, like, they had that planned. They had that character in mind even back then. Like, if you haven't watched past this isn't really a spoiler, but Zuko has a sister named Azula. And she's there next to Iroh watching Zuko get burned. And she's got, like, this evil glee on her face, which gives you an idea of what kind of person she is. But it's just interesting that they put that in there, and I never noticed that before. Oh, and one more thing I noticed about Zuko's backstory here is that it's really clarified and spelled out for us that he is officially on a mission from the Fire Lord to capture the Avatar, and he does have an agreement that if he can capture the Avatar, he will be let back into the Fire Nation, and his honor will be restored and all of that. I wasn't sure before if maybe he was banished and he just thought for himself, like, oh, if I do something really great, like bring back the Avatar, maybe I'll get back in his father's good graces, right? But no, it's actually something that he's been told, and it's his actual mission to do this. So over on the other side, Aang's backstory is mostly just filling in some details. I mean, we already pretty much knew what was going on, but it turns out he ran away from the Airbenders because he found out they were transferring him to a different temple, and he didn't want to leave all his friends, and showed some of what he was going through when he learned that he was the Avatar, how suddenly he was a lot more isolated from the other kids, and felt this big sense of responsibility and wasn't ready for that and all of that, like he was just scared. And they spent a lot of time in this episode showing Aang's sense of guilt for all of this. And I think it's been brought up before that he feels guilty that he's been gone for so long and all of these horrible things have happened in the world while he was gone. but this really highlights a lot of exactly why he feels like a lot of this is his fault. But one really weird thing about his flashbacks that I wanted to point out was in the scene where the kids are playing their ball game and they don't want him to join because they know he's the Avatar now and they feel like that would give whatever team he's on an unfair advantage. Like, after that scene is over, they're like, okay, now who wants Jinju on their team? And they cut over to this monk kid who's like, he's like got dirt everywhere, like Pigpen, and he looks all smelly and weird, like a total doofus, and he's just like, it's like, what was that scene about? So once the flashbacks are done, we get some cool action scenes of the actual storm and all these things that are going on. And one thing that I thought was really cool, I think this is the first time we see a firebender control lightning. Iroh kind of redirects some lightning away from the ship. He's not making the lightning, although I think later we find out that he can. But firebenders using lightning is like a really advanced form of firebending that we find out more later on in the series, but I wanted to point out that I think that's the first time it comes up. Also, during that scene when one of Zuko's crew members is in danger, he like immediately jumps into action, starts climbing up the tower to get him, and he catches him when he falls and smiles at him, and they kind of like, they have this moment of like, oh, okay. Like, because he had said some things earlier where he was like, I don't care about my crew's safety, we're going into the storm to find the Avatar. And then we find out here that, like, well, he does actually care about their lives, just like he used to. Like, that's how he got in all this trouble in the first place, was caring about some soldiers' lives. And we also get another Avatar state moment, which are always cool. This isn't like a big, dramatic, exciting one, but it's always fun when it shows up. And it's actually, it kind of mirrors the situation that Aang was in the first time when he froze himself in ice just to protect himself and Appa and just removed himself from the world for 100 years, basically, accidentally. This time he's in a very similar situation, drowning, running, and it's storming just like it was before, but he makes a different decision to save everybody and continue the fight and keep going rather than just self-preservation, which I like that they kind of subtly did that. But that's all I've got for this episode. If you're following along with me, the next one is The Blue Spirit, which I remember being a very good one, so I'm excited about that one. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.